everybody. My name's Pedro Ramos.
I'm Marissa Marquez.
And we're here with InclusiviTEA. Yeah, we're really excited. We kind of came up with this idea because we want to make sure that we're able to discuss topics around race, identity, and culture, or different diversity topics, and make it accessible for the Lewis and Clark community.
Because you all have busy lives, and we want to do quick little discussions and quick little things to learn about while you're going on your day-to-day schedule. So join us in the tea, everyone.
Yeah.
It's going to be hot.
Yeah, and so I'm really excited because today we're going to be introducing the topic of being uncomfortable. How many of y'all have sat down in a classroom and, I don't know.
There's just a moment when you didn't know what to say, or if you even had a place to say anything, but you knew something wasn't right. I've experienced it. I don't know if you have.
Or even when your professor calls you out. We've had multiple discussions where our professors will be like, so tell me about your experience as insert identity here, and you're like, wait, since when am I the representative? But talking about social justice, and it's become such a buzzword, but actually reflect and be how many times have I actually intervened and got out of my comfort zone to help alleviate this? And so I'll go to sleep, or I'll do something, and I'll just be like, is this creating a more just or an unjust world? And I think diversity or topics around diversity are not something that a specific office can do, or only brown people can do, or different marginalized identities. It's something that we all have to be actively engaged in. So, I guess we'll start with
the first topic of uncomfortable. Oh God, I just spilled the tea everywhere.
But actually, though,
So we're gonna talk about the bystander effect really quick, with some psych knowledge. And it's the idea that if we see something going wrong, possibly, and there's multiple people seeing this event happen, we're less likely to do anything because we assume someone else will take care of it. And we found a little quote that says, when there are four more people who are bystanders to emergency situations, the likelihood that at least one of them will help is only 31%. Wow. So think about that next time maybe someone's being harassed on the street, or I don't know if bullying happens that much in college.
So the one that comes to mind is just microaggressions.
Yeah, for sure. Very
or
common.
Sometimes when we're in our social groups, I'll hear oh, that's so gay, or whatever, and it's eye roll.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Yeah, so the idea of are we gonna choose to step in and say something or not? And are we gonna go against the bystander effect and try to actually be the person to make that difference?
And also with that, there's this diffusion of responsibility that you're expecting someone else to do something about it, but oftentimes what happens is they don't do anything about it, so nothing gets done. And that's where it becomes a little problematic, and that's kind of where we go into the psychology of being uncomfortable and what can we do to mitigate that a little bit, right?
Right.
Doing research, and something, truth bomb!
No graphic will be in
No graphic, or we'll insert a graphic later. In the Journal of Social Cognition, they mentioned about cultural fluency versus cultural disfluency, and what does that look like. Cultural fluency is when you really adapted to the social norms set in place by your community, your family, your friend group, and the people that you associate yourself with. But when you engage with people who are different from you, that's where the term cultural disfluency comes. And basically, your brain has to switch different things. But in this scenario, your brain is basically making a lot of assumptions about this person because you're trying to make their cultural experience fit yours, so that you're a little bit more uncomfortable. And within this, I think you gotta also ask yourself, are you unsafe, or are you just uncomfortable? If you're unsafe, maybe you shouldn't be dealing with it.
Yeah.
But also know that there's a difference, right? If there's a microaggression happening in class, there's definitely a way to engage with that conversation where you're not unsafe, right? you're just uncomfortable because it's awkward, to like call someone out, or to be the one person being called out. And there's like different ways to like do that. And I mentioned calling out because that's just like a thing that we see on Twitter or like on social media. It's like, I'm gonna call out blah blah blah, I'm gonna cancel you. We can cancel all we want, but we also got to continue the conversation after we cancel or call someone out. And a word that I like to use is calling in, and inviting people in conversation. I don't know if you had something to add.
No, yeah, we talk about this a lot, and the idea that we can call out people all we want, especially in Portland and especially on this campus, but it's not going to do anything if you're not following what you're saying in your own life, and you're not actually actively trying to make a change. And like, words are great and all, but if your actions don't follow, then we're not going to get very far, which I think is important. Because on this campus, especially being predominantly white, we see like a lot of people call each other out, but nothing's changing really.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think even in the greater Portland community, Portland, before I moved here, so I'm from Colorado, I had this like perception that I was like in this like neoliberal or in this like liberal haven where everybody was really progressive, like was woke, and like knew all these different topics, and really accepted people. But I mean, even within the news lately, there's been attacks against the LGBTQIA community, and so I'm like, okay, like maybe this community isn't as inclusive as we thought, and there's different things that add to the exclusion of groups, of minoritized groups that we need to talk about. And hot take, like you're gonna have a Black Lives Matter like poster. I've seen it here in Portland around like a walk around neighborhoods, and like all these like people have these like Black Lives Matter like poster on their yard, but I'm like, that's awesome, that's great, that's the first step, but what are you doing to like advocate for these communities who are targeted and imprisoned at higher rates than other like ethnic populations? So
a sign doesn't make you automatically the best ally or person taking action.
Allyship, we'll talk about that later. Do you want to go into like specific examples maybe? Yeah, you can start this off.
So going back to the class idea and not class idea, but like within classroom and microaggression possibly happening, we want to talk about that. It's okay if maybe you see yourself as an introvert or an extrovert and you're not comfortable with verbally saying anything, or maybe you are, but that it's okay to handle it different ways. I think that's an important thing to mention, because I'm more introverted and I would feel really uncomfortable speaking out. Again, uncomfortable, but then maybe pulling that person to the side in private I'd feel more comfortable with, so that would be me handling it. Whereas I know people who are way more willing to speak up in front of a lot of people, and they would just stop in the middle and maybe call the other person out and like discuss it right then. So it's okay to handle it differently, because we're all just different personalities, and it's okay to do that. So
I agree, and even on social media, you can definitely like gain and like think about how you're like engaging with these difficult conversations. So I had a friend when Kanye was doing his whole like tirade a couple months ago. Look up Kanye West. He's a hot mess express, but that's the tea. My friend like retweeted something and he's like, oh my gosh, he's standing up for something that he believed in. And I think my immediate like reaction was like, oh my gosh, this is someone in my like personal group. I need to like be like, hey, don't you know he's XYZ? But I was coming from a place of like high emotions, and I had to like take a step back and chill out. So yeah, part of it is like when these situations happen, our like bodies kind of like go into this fight or flight mechanism. But you gotta realize that like you gotta step back a little bit and then embrace the conversation. So I ended up like DMing him, and I was like, hey, like just so you know, like there's these articles, like I didn't have to explain much. I was just like, here's these articles that I found really useful to understand this topic and why it's impacting these different communities. Maybe you should check it out or something like that. So there's different ways of doing it, because when we call someone out, I've been called out. Fun fact, like I don't know if you've been, but I've like definitely had a situation where somebody was like, Pedro, that was like really sexist. Like, how dare you? And naturally, one becomes defensive because it becomes a personal attack
Right.
almost. It seems like a personal attack, even though it's maybe not intentional. And basically, you put your guard up, and you're not listening anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just like that didn't work for me. So I had to like go back and do some more research. So yeah, when we're like engaging with people, understanding that like that possibility that they'll shut down is very real. So finding ways to like go through that.
Yeah, and if you are on the other side that you are called out and you don't really know what to do, it's okay. We talked about the idea of it's okay to be wrong while you're feeling uncomfortable, but just I think it's safer, or not safer, it's more important to ask and be educated, or ask the questions to get the knowledge to understand what happened, rather than just taking it and then just, like you said, putting your guard up and not saying anything else.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times, especially on this campus, people are scared to ask us questions because they don't want to offend us or anything. But for us to go anywhere, we need to educate each other on topics that, like, I don't know what it's like to be a part of the queer community, but I can have discussions with people and try to learn from them, and not, obviously I wouldn't know their experience, but just having that knowledge from them I think is really important. Whereas if someone came up to me and wanted to know what it's like to be a Mexican American woman in the Portland area, sure, that's a different experience. And so, but you're not going to learn anything if you don't ask. I think is the point that we've like often talked about, and especially with microaggressions, you're not going to know what you said is wrong until you ask the questions and just say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but what happened? Like, what can I do differently? I think is a really important question.
Yeah, and I actually had something with that happen to me recently where, so the Lunar New Year happens every year, and it's like really, it's this really big population or this really big celebration, right? And I had posted that like Happy Chinese New Year, and somebody was like, hey, like, just, you know, like Chinese New Year isn't that really that inclusive to all these like different countries that also celebrate Lunar New Year basically, and it's like this very like important holiday. And I learned that like there's like different communities in Korea, Singapore, and other like Asian communities that like celebrate it aside from people who identify as Chinese. And so I had to like be like, oh, I'm so sorry, like let me take it back real quick, and did the research. Do your research. Don't like expect that the other person is gonna always be there to like be an encyclopedia and explain things to you. Like you also gotta put in the work. So
because some people don't want to be put in the place to educate everybody, because that's another thing. But you know, it just depends, and doing the research on your own is sometimes really helpful, especially if maybe you don't want to ask, but you take the time to do the research.
It's really important. So
but I think before we end, it's important to ask a few questions to think about, some mental
exercise.
Like, maybe, and just to think about. So if you're uncomfortable, should you not immediately resort to I'm going to sit this one out, and then ask, why are you not participating, and what would happen if you did actively participate? So what would happen? I don't know.
What would happen?
These are the important questions.
So challenge yourself. Don't talk the talk. You gotta, what is it?
Walk the walk?
Oh, yeah, you gotta walk the walk. Don't talk the talk. Something like that. Make sure you're actively engaging. It's awesome that you post things on social media, but let's kick it up a notch. I think we're all capable of doing so. There's going to be different resources that we can throw in here at the end. Here are the credits of different resources that you can check out.
And come talk to us at IME office. We're there a lot. If you want to come, just chat.
We're in the staircase up in Templeton.
So
one staircase up. So we hope to see you here.
Thanks for watching. And that was the
tea. Okay, let's try that again. And that's the tea, sis.
Boom.